Okay, so now a few words about our next speakers. Our next speakers are Samantha Ernsten and Jennifer I. Anson. Sam is the Head of Design in Digital Transformation, Digital Directorate in Scottish Government. Sam has been at ScotGov for 6 years after nearly 20 years in the private sector with brands such as HSBC, Virgin and EE. Jennifer is a lead product manager within the Digital Directorate of the Scottish Government. She's also the product owner for the Scottish Government's design system from its inception, helping launch it during the pandemic. Please welcome Sam and Jennifer to the stage. Yes, up to them. Yeah. Would you prefer?
So you've got
mics or those?
Roving mic as well. Yeah.
I think. We'll keep hold of it in case of questions.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm working from a paper set of notes. I need to put my glasses on because I'm getting old. I can't read. Okay, hi, I am Jennifer I. Anson and I am the product owner of the Scottish Government's design system. I'm delighted to be here today to reflect on our journey so far and where we're planning to go. So just to start, this is our team. We're a multidisciplinary team within the Scottish Government Digital Directorate. We've made up of UX, content design, performance analysts, graphic designers and front-end developers. Sam Ernsten, who's going to be talking in a minute, has recently joined us as our Head of Design and SRO of the design system. So today I'm going to be talking about how we're going to be meeting the needs of the users in Scotland, our design system in the wild, and then 3 things 3 years on, the 3 areas we want to improve, and the strategic vision for the next, or Sam will be talking about the strategic vision for the 23 to 25. So meeting the needs of the users in Scotland. Scotland is a devolved power, a devolved government and a separate legal system. This means different services for the 5.4 million people of Scotland and the rest of the UK. Our design system's first components and patterns were created in 2014 when we were tasked with building mygov.scot. If you're not aware, mygov.scot is the site providing equivalent to mainstream content on gov.uk. Our team was tasked to design and build the site in 2013. The site has user-centred content that makes public services in Scotland easy to find and understand. We give people and businesses information about how to access public services in Scotland and your rights about what you can and cannot do in Scotland. By 2014, we had an alpha prototype that formed the basis of our design system components. It brought consistent design to a patchwork of components across several sites into one mygov.scot's location. We'd needed the components with consistent accessibility, usability, interaction and measurability, but with the evidence and ongoing backdrop of an independence agenda by the current administration, we made it blue. Sorry, it's not clicked. Have I done something? Wait a minute. There we are. Sorry about that. So Social Security signed up to use mygov.scot as their entry point for their services around 2016-17. These devolved services have embedded taking a person-centred approach to service delivery. We have collaborated with them to build their services using our patterns alongside their look and feel. They had evidence that their users needed to distinguish between the devolved services and reserved services. Our system helps them do that. Having a design system already and collaborating with Social Security has avoided duplication of the agency deciding they needed their own design system. It's been a win-win situation for Social Security having patterns that they can use and for us seeing our patterns used in a high-profile service. So Digital Directorate owned a Scottish set of consistent assets that they had flexibility of look and feel built in, had evidence that the look and feel flexibility was important to address Scottish user needs, and our senior leaders expected Scottish content to look Scottish. We've recently set out our purpose to capture this. We want the design system to be used across the Scottish public sector and not just in core services. To achieve the broader aim and legal duty of ensuring that the people of Scotland get, turning pages, accessible services that look right for them, so we set out with a clear purpose. Our purpose is to enable teams within the Scottish public sector to design and build digital products that are accessible, usable, consistent for people accessing public services in Scotland. So we also set out a second statement of how we're going to do this. We provide teams with a reusable and scalable toolkit that includes components, patterns and guidance, and a way to access support from us when needed. Since the launch of the design system in 2020, we've embedded the design system on our core websites, GOV.UK, our services from key programmes such as Social Security Scotland, the digital cloud, payments and identity services too. A big benefit of this toolkit to decision makers is that we allow organisations out with the core government to express their Scottish brand identities. As a result, we have organisations such as the National Records of Scotland, Revenue Scotland and Accountancy and Bankruptcy using the design system to build accessible products and services with their own branding. They may otherwise have gone down their own path, a path that might have prioritised the look and feel over consistent accessibility, usability, interaction, measurability benefits of any other design system. So since launch in 2020, our design system is out there in use and more use is on the way. Our design system product site has around 12,500 visitors in the last year, and we have a core group of around 3,000 users who are deeply engaged in using the design system. Users have told us that it's saving them time because the work is done to figure out common patterns, saving them money by not needing to hire as many practices to small Scottish teams, and it's well supported by a responsive team. But they've also taught us through the way that they've used our design system and what they've said when they've got in touch. For example, we found that even if we give them the right components to reuse, they may not put them together in the right pattern. It isn't just about copying and pasting the code, there's context to the component and use and positioning, and we need to help them, the users, to understand this. We don't want our components put together in a non-user-centred way. Remaining nameless, some users have stacked a bunch of components to create a single-page form, very lengthy forms, to save out on anyone's bad design. We've mocked this design up here. And I believe that if they had had more UCD practices within their teams, they may have employed better form design best practice in this case, which is obviously, one of them is to ask one question per page. Hopefully the interaction designers and content designers in the room will agree that that's a good approach. So we realised they needed much more guidance around form design. This suggested that our users generally need more help around how to use our design system in the context of when and where to use what component. Another lesson we've learned was that our users know what else they need or want from us. It was also clear that they had great feedback and ideas about what else we could do. They like to see our new updates and announcements on what we're doing, but they also want to tell us what they think, what ways our content could improve, and what are the gaps they see in our system. Some have wanted to design whole components and patterns and submit them to us. The third thing we've learned is that the decision makers are still hung up on their own uniqueness and whether or not the design system is flexible enough for their brand. They see it in our colours and branding and think that they can't adapt it, which is ironic because we needed our design system to reflect our unique Scottish Government identity. So it is set up with flexibility in mind for brand choices and colour. These experimental mock-ups still use our design system but utilise a more neutral colour scheme that avoids the Scottish blue. So we've started to work towards fixes to address these three lessons. We hope that doing so will help us to encourage greater adoption of our design system across the Scottish public sector. One of the first things we're doing is that we're writing better documentation on how and when to use our components. We've added lots of new guidance, such as how to design good forms, and more recently, accessible colour use in charts and graphs. There is 103 public sector organisations in Scotland. They range in size and DDAP maturity. It's a complex ecosystem. We want to dig further into the needs of these organisations and their suppliers, particularly where they have less mature user-led cultures and don't have DDAP professionals embedded in their team. To get them to adopt the design system, we need to make sure we have a design guidance to meet their needs. Not only are we expanding the guidance we include on the design system itself, but we're also working on a home for design guidance that's a bit more in depth on accessibility, content standards, URL design and more. We're also working behind the scenes to better document our design decisions and evidence behind them so that we have more detail to give to those that need it. Lesson 2, we're working towards making it easier for people to collaborate with us when they get evidence that something should change or be different. At the moment, we don't have any way for them to tell us quickly, for example, through GitHub repository comments. We have added clearer announcements about changes and additions, but we're also wanting to explore a possible forum, improved versioning, direct messaging between us and our users, and other ways to get in touch. We're also going to be working on a process for parent submission. Thirdly, we're trying to be more clear about the value of our design system, particularly around what it keeps consistent and what it gives you the freedom to change, so that you can win those arguments with senior managers about colours and brands that we've already had. We're going to set this out with some new content that we're working on, coming and talking at conferences like this, doing more mock-ups and examples of different ways you can style our system. But these are the fixes, these are the as-is. What about what's coming next? What about our to-be? How does that fit into the broader digital strategy? I'm going to hand you over to Sam, and she's going to talk about our strategic vision.
Morning, everybody. So I'm just going to tell you, thank you, Jen, for talking through the progress that we've made with the design system so far and coming on board recently. It's been great to start this job with a fantastic product and a really enthusiastic team who are all really wanting to do the right thing for organisations in the public sector in Scotland. So it kind of makes my job a lot easier. So a lot of the fixes that we're doing really need to be situated within the strategic context of SG and how we're helping public sector deliver digital transformation. And the reality is we're radically shifting the ways that we are working. We have the way that we've worked in the past is to really be embedded within teams, taking DDAP folk, user-centred design, product technical, etc., being embedded into a team and helping them hand in hand do digital transformation. And what we've learned over the years is this is not a sustainable way to embed digital transformation. It's not a sustainable way to embed digital skills, and it's not good value for money when it comes to delivering digital services. So we need to look at new ways of working. So what are those new ways? So Jeff Huggins, our digital director, has set out something which we're calling the digital programme, which at its heart says that we need to do digital better and we need to do it in a more sustainable way. We need to be able to create sustainable, joined up and reliable services that not only deliver value for money, but also enable our users to seamlessly use services and get what they want and get what they need in the most straightforward way possible. So what does this mean for design? It means that, as Jen said, we need to work much closer with teams to enable them to have the capabilities, understand how to embed those capabilities. We need to provide the guidance, and we also need to have the products and tools that we need to develop to enable them to start to learn to do digital transformation themselves. So this is a real radical shift from how we've been working right now, where teams are used to come to us and ask us directly for help, and we won't be able to do that so much in the future. So one of the first things that we're working on, that Jen alluded to earlier, is really being clear and setting out a proposition around our design system, being clear about what it is and what it isn't, and who it's for. We've talked a lot about guidance, but we need to make that a lot tighter, and we need to also communicate what teams need to do, and also what organisations need to embed for themselves. The use of the design system is going to be crucial to make sure that all the services that we deliver are consistent and accessible, and we need to make it as easy as possible for organisations to know that they should be using the design system, and that we have a product that can help them and really build an excellent service. So the things that we're doing right now is just working out what that proposition is, what will and won't go on our design system, and to be clear about where we expect patterns to be used and reused. We want to enhance the guidance to show patterns and components, as brand agnostic, as Jen has already shown. And we'll work with teams, alongside teams, to utilise the design system to show and not tell how you make the best use of our design system. Once we've done all that, we're in a better place to understand and almost audit the services that public sector delivers in Scotland, and so that we'll be able to understand what are the patterns and components we need to deliver on the design system. And finally, after that, we'll be able to create and facilitate community and collaboration more formally than we do right now, to make sure that if our design system is not being used, we can ensure that good practice is followed and applied before it's too late. So the second thing we need to do is to be able to support organisations in lots of different ways to make sure it's easy for them to be able to use our design system. We've already conducted a lot of user research to understand not only how users are engaging with the design system, what type of roles are interested in using the design system, and it's not just designers. So we're currently working to really design out that supporting service, so that whether it's a small project team starting to build a website, or a larger programme like Social Security delivering devolved benefits in Scotland, we have a support model that can support our users. Our current model means that we're supporting users individually, often getting asked the same questions time and time again. So we really want to make sure that we're connecting the dots for users and being able to surface the information they need without having to keep talking to us all the time. So some of the things that we're working on just now is creating a home for some of that guidance, so that organisations and teams know where to go when they need help, and really are clear about what they should be doing and how they set up their project for success using the design system. We're also undertaking a lot more research to understand our landscape more deeply, so that we can create a sustainable support model that helps with better adoption of the design system and utilisation of the patterns and components within the design system, such as how we support different tech stacks, etc. So in the future, our ambition is to have a support model that really leaves no project behind, no matter how small that project is. There is guidance, dedicated support and community support available to a whole range of users, whether they are designers, technical or non-designers. In order to do that, we really need to make sure our design system is set up for success. So we're looking at how we're making sure that all of our processes within the team and the design system itself will work when it's being used at a larger scale. so that organisations can use the design system with minimal friction. We know that building credible components and patterns that are evidence-based is going to be our bread and butter, but we also need to respond to our users when they have needs. If we're going to be their first port of call, we need to show we know what we have, what we're developing, and how we're prioritising our work to make a really transparent design system that really enables organisations to know how to go about building their digital service. So right now we're doing some of those fixes to make sure the design system can work at scale. Most of this stuff is invisible. It's a bit like all the infrastructure that you do when you're building your house, but it's really important that we get this right. So we've migrated our design system onto our strategic solution, Bloomreach Cloud, and we're also developing our approach to versioning, as Jen mentioned. We're starting to document and understand the key processes that we have and identifying those that we need to really set up for success. And we're also articulating and embedding a clear set of measures to make sure that we are holding ourselves to account, not just in terms of adoption, but also making sure we operate a reliable service. And finally, one of the things that we've understood and we've learned from our research is one of the things that is key to making sure that the design system is utilised is really looking at how can we get the design system talked about it as early as possible in project conversations. And what we've learned is that embedding design system into procurement routes, whether that's an ITT or buying something off the framework, is a really core and key process to make sure that people are utilising the design system. I used to work in DAO, Digital Assurance Office, assuring lots of projects. Part of that job was assessing projects after they'd completed, and something that we all often saw that we use suppliers a lot in Scotland to help us supplement resources and also undertake a lot of digital builds because we don't have the capability embedded within our teams. And the first point where that starts to go wrong is really at procurement. We see a lot of procurements asking that people use a design system or use our design system, but without the supporting information to do that. And without the knowledge and expertise embedded into teams don't know whether the design system has been adopted properly by a supplier or not. So we're working on a lot of different initiatives to really ensure that the design system is embedded into procurement, and that will continue going forward. So some things we're doing right now is looking at creating a digital tool that assesses a supplier's ability to utilise a design system, create accessible services and usable services. This is in a collaborative project utilising our CivTech, which is our startup and innovator initiative within digital, to align with other specialisms like cybersecurity. So for the first time, instead of us asking and getting a load of kind of waffle back from suppliers, we can actually identify and lock down a question set that will give us no doubt whether an organisation is able to use and utilise a design system or not. Alongside that, it will also make sure that the organisation, whether they have a COTS product, an off-the-shelf product, that they can make sure that it is accessible and WCAG compliant. And also we look at how that product is being developed and continually improved to ensure that it meets user needs. We're also going to create content and guidance that can be embedded within the procurement routes. So whether or not the team has specialist resources, that content will help guide a supplier on how to utilise the design system and also guide the team to make sure that they can use the design system successfully. And longer term, we will look at how we can ensure that organisations that are on our procurement framework, which is renewed in 2026, will also all utilise the design system and abide by the standards that we've set down. So just giving you a little bit of an insight into some of the work we've been doing on the design system, and we're going to hand over to you for some questions if anyone has any, and there's a QR code there to also sign up for our newsletter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a question at the front here.
Hi, thanks. I wanted to ask a question for Jen. You mentioned a really intriguing little bit about the improving the components in the design system. You talked about the measurability of those components. So I was wondering if you could give us an example of like a component with like maybe poorer measurability compared to another. How do you gauge that, and where does the value come from?
I'm not more that we have built in tracking and different things into it to be able to measure how well it's performing. So tracking is built into our design system. So yeah, it's more to try and measure its success in the future, and whether it's working. We've got people in the audience as well, by the way, that are all from the design system team that are on the hook for some of these questions.
Okay, we have another question down here.
Hi there. Thanks very much for your talk. It was great. What's your process for onboarding or evaluating what new components should be brought into the design system? I'm a frustrated designer who sometimes goes to these amazing design systems, but sometimes they don't have the component I want. So how do you kind of evaluate? What's the kind of demand for that component, and is there a process?
That's what we're actually working on at the moment. That's what I was saying. So at the moment we haven't taken on any actual components from externally or from our other digital teams yet. We're planning to work with Digital Identity, who are working on Scott account, to take on board some of their patterns that they've worked on where they've used our design system. And we're going to work through what that process looks like. I think we're quite clear though that we won't take on everything, and that we have to kind of work out what things are valuable or what we think is valuable to the wider public sector, and what's maybe nuanced and maybe needs to be supported by an organisation that actually needs that sort of variant, if you know what I mean. So I think we're not quite there with the balance yet about what we think will be on our design system versus supported by an organisation using our design system.
Can I just add a bit?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so as Jen said, it's been pretty ad hoc to date, and that's really been because where the design system focus has been. Now we're scaling to really support more of Scottish public, or all of Scottish public sector. We'll need to be clear first about what the design system is and isn't. And that will give us a really clear kind of starting point to prioritise whether we're going to develop a pattern or not. And even if and then the second part is about support. So even if we decide developing a pattern is not going to be on the design system per se, we want to be able to facilitate community to ensure that good design happens, so that we don't get the Frankenstein's monster that Jen showed earlier. So it is about being clear. I think we need to understand a little bit more in that landscape piece about what are the patterns and components that people need based on the services that they're delivering. And, in my head, I'd like to support, circa 60 to 70% of being able for organisations to be able to build 60 or 70% of their service with our design system, and leaving that little unique bit for them to add on. But the second point is about that community, because we just want to have a better visibility around the design that's taking place to make sure that there is consistency and that we're doing the right thing for the user. We're creating usable services that actually fit together, join up and flow.
Okay, we have another question down here.
Thank you. So I work with the Ministry of Justice, and when I saw you have a multidisciplinary team with your design system, I got like the goosebumps of jealousy. And I was kind of curious where we're currently on stage talking to leadership about the value of this stuff. And we've got some interesting queries and questions like, it seems interesting, but can you quantify what success looks like? And how can we help baseline the now compared to what the future could be? I'm curious if those conversations came up about measurements of success in a quantifiable way. We've got loads of things that are qualitative but not quantitative. So, yeah, curious if you've got any insights on that.
Do you want me to take that? Yeah, totally feel you on that. I've worked a long time in private sector where everything's measured, maybe a little bit too much. Coming into public sector, it's the antithesis of that. Some of the work that I'm doing with the performance analysts that are here is looking at the service landscape and what should we be measuring, and trying to, one, benchmark that, and two, really setting out what we expect products to be performing against. At the moment, that is not clear. Larger programmes in Scotland, like social security, will be measuring, but they're measuring themselves, and I'd like to look at a way that we are much more transparent about our measures, we're much more transparent about the performance of those measures, not to make teams feel bad, but to spot where problems are, where we can actually start to intervene and try and create holistic change, rather than just having services all scrabbling around, not wanting to look at the numbers. So I'm very keen to make things a lot more visible and transparent. At the same time, holding our own selves to account for that as well. I don't expect just to be pointing everything out. So we've kick-started that work, but it is, again, it's a radical shift from where we've been before, because services have looked after themselves, we've provided resources, and we've worked within those teams to really set up good practice. But the shift now is to more visible and transparent services in Scotland. So I would say watch this space on that. Thank you. Thanks for your question.
Thank you. We've got a question from Tom here.
Thanks, Imran. Currently, the Scots prototyping kit is on the Axure platform. Can you tell me some of the thinking around that, and as opposed to the code kit that GOV.UK uses? And is there any future plans to transition towards that?
Yeah, well, we have actually two sort of prototype sort of things that we're making available at the moment, Axure and Figma. So we've done more work recently in transitioning to Figma from Adobe XD, because we kind of, it is obviously the buzz piece of software at the moment, so we've kind of got moved from Adobe XD to that. With Axure, it's more a legacy thing of that is what we've been using within the Scottish Government. That's what's used by some of the core agencies that are currently in government. So like it kind of makes sense at the moment to continue with Axure to sort of serve that user base. But I don't think we're opposed to changing or moving to other technologies if we think that that's appropriate. We just haven't got there yet. That's the two that we've got right now.
Okay, thank you. And we've got one final question from Frankie.
Hello. It sounds like you've got quite a wide range of organisations to try and influence, including some quite arm's length ones. You've mentioned a few carrots in terms of providing support and helping teams, and this kind of procurement stick as well. I wondered if you had any other sort of carrots and sticks that you use to try and persuade teams to use your system.
I think we are more carrot, and I would.
We've not got the stick. I was going to say, yeah.
I think there is a bit of a stick, and that is our assurance route, which, like UK government, we have service standards, Digital Scotland service standards that the bigger projects are assessed against. And at the moment, I mean, it's a great example of where we could really tighten up, because at the moment, we do say you should be using one of the government design systems, but we don't really have an elegant way of testing, of actually checking that. So some of the things that we will be developing that could be perceived as sticks, like a way of checking, we'd like it to be more of a carrot. That assurance route will not go away. If anything, it's going to get a little bit more sticky than it is right now. Stick-like maybe is a better way of saying that. But I think the support model that we want to put in place, making it easy for, and then having the content that we can embed into routes to procurement, I think will really just make it easier for people just to be adopting the design system, rather than some of the things that we're doing right now is the organisations already had their spend approved, already chosen their agency and supplier, and then we're having to go in and be extremely charming, charismatic and persuasive to basically ask them, can you use the design system? And it's quite exhausting. So we're really trying to look at just making it a much more kind of easy choice rather than the hard choice.
Yeah, we're definitely barging our way in when we find out about a service being built and it not using design system.
Okay, fantastic. We are going to have to wrap up. So hands together for Sam and Jen.